As one of Draven's favorites, Sting would say, it's showtime, folks.
That's right.
By the way, we're going to be talking 1989 pro wrestling,
Right.
February specifically. But just quick thoughts, because Sting is a big part of WCW or NWA 1989, and now here we are in 2024, and this dude is about to have his last match in a couple weeks.
He's made of iron, man. I mean, look at him. He's still moving like he's 30 years old. And I'm pretty sure the limited house show schedule or lack thereof of house show schedule
Absolutely.
helps him out. But, at 64-ish, I mean, he's still doing some crazy, insane shit out there every time he goes out there to wrestle.
I don't know.
So
I don't know why he does half of the stuff that he does, because he absolutely does not need to do it.
he looks in that mirror. He's like, gotta keep up with these guys,
I guess so.
And he's also been very lucky as well.
Well, I mean, what a turnaround, right? Like the Sting that we would have known in the late 90s is probably headed in a little bit of the wrong direction. And the guy turns his life around, and it adds 20 years, 25 years to his career with the changes that he made. It's pretty amazing if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, he had a rep for being lazy. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when he was Curl Sting. I think one of the criticisms that he got was that he showed up out of shape at that Starrcade '97, and that's when Hulk Hogan told Nick Patrick, "Go ahead and slow count him for showing up fat, essentially." You know, but yeah, no, it is a big turnaround, and I guess at the end of the day, he just owed it to himself to just prove something to himself, right? That he could still go.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, he's still limited. He's not out there having Will Ospreay matches, and his matches are very gimmicky. But he's definitely for his age is still just amazing to look at sometimes.
Yeah. The face paint stuff works out for him great. The having the human Daredevil as his tag team partner works out as well.
Yes,
Like,
and I'm sure that has something to do with, right. I'm sure that Darby Allin kind of pushes him to go above and beyond what he's capable of, just because he's out there with him. What is he gonna do? Put on a headlock when Darby Allin's throwing himself off of 25-foot ladders into chairs?
Yeah, no.
So yeah,
agree. Darby Allin versus Jeff Hardy, one of the few times I've really disagreed with Dave on air about a match. Oh my gosh, on Rampage, that was
insane.
It was a stunt. It was like a stunt match of I'm going to show you how I can almost hurt myself but still do stuff in this match, and they just kept outdoing each other. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Okay, enough about 2024. We're going back.
Well, no, I got some questions to ask you about 2024.
All right, go ahead.
Tomorrow's Elimination Chamber from Perth, right? No, it's on Saturday. Saturday. I'm thinking it's Friday.
This is going live right now on YouTube. It'll go in the audio feed sometime this weekend. I'm not sure exactly, but
okay. So we're doing WWF
coming up.
We're doing WWF 1984 house show television taping schedule. We're taping like before, and then we have to keep track of these days.
Yes.
So we got the big show coming up. I'm excited for it. I think the build has been pretty good. I think I don't think it's been as planned out as they want to make you think it's been. I think
lots
of changes along the way, right? The CM Punk injury really threw things out of whack for that title, but still, I mean, I'm intrigued, and I want to see how they get there. Originally, I thought it was going to be still The Rock and Roman Reigns, but now it's looking like it's going to be a tag match on day one, and then Cody and Roman on night two. So is that the information you have?
That's what it sounds like, but
is that the scuttlebutt, as Dusty Rhodes would say?
The one thing about this entire WrestleMania lead up has been how quickly they've been willing to change, A, because of what you said with the CM Punk injury, but B, because they misread the scenario there, and Rock got booed, and so they had to adjust there. which I give them credit for, because they could have been stubborn, like, old school mentality of wrestling says, well, no, you just put the biggest match out there. And to them, they go, well, that may not be the best case scenario for us, because this fan base is denying for the story to be finished. They're telling us right now that they are. Now, if you do it, whatever happens is not as big as it could have been, then maybe you don't listen to the immediate reaction the next time. But they chose to, and this is it's Triple H, and it's Rock, and it's Brian Gewirtz, and it's Nick Khan. Like all of those very opinionated and smart people are involved, and you know how it can be sometimes when you have too many cooks in the kitchen. So we still have some time to see how this plays out.
Yeah, it could become a big mess for sure.
Yeah.
But you're right. Going back to how stubborn they could be, I mean, just Roman Reigns' initial push, right, with the whole Daniel Bryan thing back in 2014. That was them kind of just sticking their feet in the sand and saying this is how it's going to be. Now they're a little more open minded. I mean, we are seeing a change with I guess you would call it the Triple H era. Of him being the head of creative. I mean, even everything from production to just what he accepts, right? Working with different companies, as long as I feel like as long as he gets to keep his foot on their head, he'll work with any other company. You know what I'm saying? So, like TNA, for example.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right, well, let's get back to 1989. We are in the build to WrestleMania 5 with the big Savage and Hogan match, and we're going to get to the main event, the Friday night main event that they have. We're going to get to that in a second. We're also going to get to Chi-Town Rumble, Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. The 35th anniversary of that match just happened. A very historic match. And but what I want to start with first is something that we ended the last episode with, which is the Vince McMahon Ted Turner feud does not start because of the Monday Night War. It starts right now. And I think because pro wrestling itself, if you're considering WWF at this time, is still very popular. The NWA side of things is more like the hardcore fans. It's a little bit kind of like WWE and AEW today. And Vince McMahon and Ted Turner are having this battle for pay-per-view dates and pay-per-view attention and household clearances and all of this. And I want to open, because this is a story that I did not know a lot about until I dug in to the 89 Observers. Dave himself, not that he gets bad information, but he believes that there's a possibility that Ted Turner is going to get a ton of clearances for a head-to-head show that goes up against WrestleMania, and that the cable companies, because they're pissed off at Vince, are actually going to not clear homes for Vince. And if you think about this with our mindset and our understanding of history, it sounds like hogwash, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it absolutely turns out to be hogwash. So I'm going to read from Dave's reporting. So this is in February. He writes that I'm told by someone who's very familiar with pay-per-view clearances and is unaffiliated with NWA or WWF, that if Ted Turner has locked up Viewer's Choice, which was the main pay-per-view company, Request, and Viacom, that McMahon's potential clearances for WrestleMania 5 would have to be less than $2 million. And you're talking about only 2 years since WrestleMania 3, which was like a giant success in pay-per-view. And so then he goes on and says, what they could do, what Vince could try and put WrestleMania 5 on NBC and run it free and use that to combat Ted Turner. What actually happens is that the NWA wants to counter WrestleMania with a pay-per-view called Wrestle War 89, The Ultimate Gamble. Had you heard this story before you reread these?
That was the first time, and again, it's just I would say a rare misfire by old Uncle Dave, especially during this time, where he's so connected. Um, but even just thinking about it logically at that time, Vince had so much equity with these cable companies, right? So I think there was this perception that Ted, because he came from that television background, right? And so he had all these connections, and it turned out that that wasn't the case at all. They still ran the Clash though against WrestleMania 5.
Yes, they do end up doing that. And so the reporting, it turns out that Dave basically says, okay, these cable companies were using good old Teddy Turner for
Yes.
leverage against Vince, because what Vince wanted a bigger cut of the actual pay-per-view money. I don't remember what.
Did you ever hear those ridiculous numbers, even during the Attitude Era? Like it was something like the WWE and WCW, ECW, they were getting like 40 cents on the dollar, some like ridiculous number, right?
Yeah.
Because these cable companies had them by the balls during that time. Because where else are you going to show your product?
Yes. And that's a big reason why they went into the WWE network, because
Hmm.
they're like, why should the cable companies get a piece of our business? Why shouldn't we get all of our business? And I think that's what it was. It was like 45 to the companies and 55 to the 45 to the wrestling companies and like 55 to the cable companies. And I think what Vince was trying to do is he was trying to flip that to like a crazier degree on the other side, like 75-25 or 80-20 or something like that. And so he had these demands, and the way that the cable companies were trying to out leverage him was to say, oh, well, what we're actually going to do is we're going to have Ted run against you, and we're only going to show Ted's show, so your show's not going to be shown at all. And so when they all kind of come down from their crazy demands,
Yeah, they're
NWA
ivory towers.
NWA is actually used as a pawn, so that Vince agrees to the current deal as they have it. Because for Vince, 45% of 600,000 buys or whatever they end up doing for the show. I don't even remember, because this is a giant angle for him. This is not Bret Hart and Bob Backlund and Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash, right? This is the
Right.
Mega Powers. This is what they've been building. This is them being on NBC
I
and
mean, I
getting
mean,
their angle.
before the Bloodline angle, which drew a lot of comparisons to the Mega Powers Explode, just because of the longevity and the week to week storytelling aspect of it. Yeah, it was the Mega Powers angle for almost 30 years, right? That was kind of the one that everybody remembers as that soap opera style kind of storytelling. I mean, we in the Attitude Era, it wasn't really like that. You had so many different dynamics changing weekly that it wasn't this one linear story that was being told. So yeah, so no, the Hogan Savage Elizabeth angle was and is one of the most legendary angles in the history of wrestling.
Yes, it is. And it is, they're using Vince's great angle against him, saying like, yeah, we can sabotage you if we want. We're the ones with the power. And he has to come down from that and not, and, go away from his demands. Okay. So here's
Well, essentially, it's a game of chicken, and everybody's scared. Teddy Turner's scared, Vince scared, and the cable companies are scared. And it's all about who's going to move first. And for better or worse, Vince was the one that moved first, and it was like, okay, this is the deal that we have.
Now, here's another part of this story that I did not know until I reread these observers. On February the 3rd, Vince gives Ted a call. And,
That's right.
and he wants to make peace with this wrestling war, and he
and
wants to stop the raiding of the talent.
and this is not the classic. You're in the wrestling business. I'm in the
No.
entertainment business. That was when Teddy called Vince.
Yes.
This was Vince calling Teddy now. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, again, like what the narrative has been about Vince and Ted, it's 1995. Like that's the narrative of. It's almost like they didn't know each other, but as we know, Black Saturday, this
Yes.
time frame. So they very much are
They
aware
had
of
a
each other.
history already, for
Yes.
sure.
So the reason, and so this is Dave's report. This is more Dave's analysis. So Dave believes Vince is in the lead, and he's in a big lead. But B, this is less about Ted rating his talent. It is about keeping the salaries low.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about how wrestling works today, like, we look at the numbers for what WWE makes in revenue, and we look at what they spend in talent, it is such a small percentage of their
Very
overall
low,
revenue.
very low. Yeah.
Like, you think of big time team sports, it's like 50% goes to the players and 50% goes to the ownerships.
Not the Dodgers, but I hear you.
but here, in wrestling, it's probably like 10% to 90% for WWE, and I'm sure AEW is a much bigger pie to the wrestlers, just because Tony Khan has that money to just kind of throw around. But yeah, like, so it's not, it hasn't changed really that much. Like, WWE, and this is to bring it back to current time frame. Dave and I were talking to a guy by the name of Tim Marchman from Vice, and he's doing a lot of reporting on Ashley Massaro, Janelle Grant, Vince McMahon, and got like completely wiped out today for some crazy reason. So that company, like, I think Tim's actually gonna do something new, but he was saying how you would think, like, if somebody was like if both of the companies were trying to sign somebody. So let's say Will Ospreay. You brought up Will Ospreay earlier. Technically, based on revenues, WWE should easily get anybody they want. Like, money should not be an option. But it's this mentality of, if we sign Will Ospreay to the highest contract we have, then we got to bump Roman up. Then we got to bump Becky Lynch up. Then we got to bump Randy Orton up. Then we got to bump, and so they opt out of that so that they could keep their salary structure as low as humanly possible. So it's like so similar some 35 years later to how it was in 1989. I found that part fascinating.
The part that I found fascinating, and we all knew this, is how astute of a businessman Vince McMahon was when he was younger. Because again, the reason he's trying to negotiate all this is because he's trying to see the future. He's 2 to 3 steps ahead, and thinking about salary structure. It has nothing to do with cable access or clearances. It's more about, if this happens, I'm gonna be paying up the yin yang for these wrestlers, and so we don't want that. So he wants to get together with Teddy to kind of explain to him how it's going to affect both of them in a negative way, you know. And you're right. We see that even today. I mean, the salary has improved quite a lot actually, just because I think there's a lot of pressure to do so, but it's nowhere near where it should be.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for UFC. Those
even
fighters
worse
are still very much
even worse
Yeah.
for UFC.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens, which is why I find this call that he makes fascinating as well, because Vince signs JJ Dillon to join his company. And why do you think he was like, why is JJ so valuable for Vince at this point?
Well, I mean, JJ did have administrative experience, from what I understand. He was doing a lot of administrative work with the NWA at that time. That's one of the reasons why, to sidetrack a little bit, that's one of the reasons why Johnny Ace also got his job back in 2001, because he had a lot of experience in All Japan, then later on in WCW as an administrator. And so JoJo had a lot of value there, and it was also just whipping his dick out, at Ted Turner, and this was a little before Jim Herd, so just the office over at still NWA at this time. And so, but I think the most important thing was that JJ did have that office administrative background, and so that's why he rated him.
And JJ also knew what all the NWA talent was making.
Well, that's true. Yeah, as an administrator, to connect it back.
Okay, here's my favorite part, because it just shows you again how little wrestling has changed in 35 years. Tony Schiavone
Yes.
jumps to WWE, and Dave is doing a guesstimate on the salary. He thinks it's 138,000. So I don't know why it's not 140, but
Which in 1989 money, that's a lot of money.
that's good money in for an announcer. And so what happens with Schiavone in the NWA is he's relegated to syndication. Jim Ross has taken over as the lead guy for play-by-play. So Tony Schiavone gets pushed to syndication, so he's unhappy. And he
I knew he was unhappy when I turned on the television one day in late '88, early '89, and he shaved off his mustache. That's what I do. Like, so Tony's not a happy man right now, because that's the Tony that I've always respected, the one with the mustache, from the mid '80s. That was like the real sports style kind of play-by-play guy, the play-by-play guy that we used to have. Once he rolled up with the clean shaven face, I'm like, oh, something's going on here.
Like he signed with the Yankees or something.
That's right. Yeah.
I think I remember him. He went all the way back to like '83, right? He's like the backstage interviewer in like Starrcade '83, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. He was '83. You're correct. Yeah, he was an announcer for minor. I want to say the Baltimore Orioles. No. He was the announcer. Yeah, the Baltimore Orioles minor league team, which was owned by the Crockett's. So that's where they found him. Yeah, and then he started doing some gigs with the Crockett's, and he got promoted up the ranks.
And so, according to Dave, Schiavone, they were grooming him to take over Vince's roles on the television, which does not really happen.
Well, he got SummerSlam '89, and he got the 1990 Royal Rumble. So, and those were two that eventually Vince took over.
Yes.
So, yes. I mean, the following years,
Okay, so WrestleMania tickets, they go on sale, Atlantic City, back to Trump Towers. They are priced at.
I get a kick out of this when you say the price. Before the same Breslov era, some of these prices are. I wish they were still. Just put it that way. Go ahead. Give
25, 50, 100, and 150 where all of the live gate is being scaled for $1.8 million. Now, again, we can bring it to current prices. The secondary market for AEW Revolution, I think the get-in price is still fairly low, like $25 or something. Though I'm sure, Tony Khan's platinum seats are thousands of dollars to sit on the floor.
Well, they all are.
Yeah.
So, no matter what you want to watch.
WWE is going to be in San Jose on Monday. And I took a look at the prices. I think I'm crossing my fingers that I'm going to get the hook.
They'll connect
because my buddy works for the Ringer, and of course, the Bill Simmons and WWE work together on stuff. So
we're gonna see both our buddy Steve. You know Steve, I know Steve, right? Let's kayfabe that, but I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but yes. Anyways,
so. The get-in price for Monday Night Raw, when I last looked, was like $150. Like, this thing is selling like crazy for this random Monday night show. I
had the same thing in Anaheim. I was considering it. Again, I'm pretty spoiled. If I don't get it for free, I don't go anymore. Yeah. But that's the crypto arena. That's where I have to connect. But I was looking at Anaheim, like, you know what? If I get a decent price for Anaheim. I haven't been to a live wrestling show since WrestleMania, I think. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. Secondary market, random, run-of-the-mill Monday Night Raw, $160 for all the way to the top.
Yeah.
The euchre seats.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? I thought it was a typo. I kept on refreshing, but no, that they're hot right now, man. They're really hot.
Really hot. They are really hot. I mean, I don't know if people think The Rock is going to be at these shows because he's not probably for the majority of them, but it seems like just the fact that he's kind of running around town being on the shows has really, really helped their market as far as selling tickets.
Yeah, it has. And I also think that had that been the case, we would have started seeing a lot of that negative feedback online, and we haven't. I think Cody's really over. I think people pay to see Cody for sure. I think Roman working, more shows than he has over the last 6 months has also helped. So I think it's a combination of, yeah, The Rock is a huge thing, it's a huge deal, but also the roster is over right now as well.
You know, I was having this conversation about today's wrestling and live wrestling. And the one thing that you're going to get if you go to WWE show, if it's a Raw TV taping, like 9 times out of 10, you're getting Cody, no matter what. If you're a Sami Zayn guy, more than likely you're getting Sami Zayn. You're getting Rhea, you're getting the Judgment Day. So the stars,
You're getting our truth lately.
yeah, even our, but the stars, you're gonna get them. Even if it's not advertised, you have faith that you're gonna see them. And then on the other side, on the SmackDown side, you're gonna get Owens. You're gonna get some of the Bloodline. On the Raw side, you're gonna get Jey Uso. And I think that is a problem with AEW because when you buy tickets to an AEW show a couple of months in advance, you really aren't sure who you're going to see. And you can see that a lot with this this ending, the Sting run. You would think that he would be on all of these TVs heading into his last, but he's not. And some of it is he had his father passing away, which is a big deal. He was supposed to be on the TV, but still, like you would think, like, man, he's going to be done with this thing, and so even if he shows up to the live audience and says hi, like that is a selling point to go to an AEW show, but they don't do it that way for whatever reason.
And I don't understand that. It's booking 101. It's promoting 101. I know that for years I vented to you about my displeasure of how AEW has ran television from the very beginning. With no house show schedule, I don't see why we don't have super shows every Wednesday and Saturday. I just cannot understand that, why it's not all hands on deck. It almost seems like TK has his own like roster split, and that's what he promotes. I know some guys work both shows, but not all the guys, and so it's very frustrating because I think that would help attendance a lot. If 2 months in you're giving me a couple names, or even like a big dark match, like a headline dark match, like Swerve versus Hangman as a dark match. It's like back in the '80s where you would have Hogan wrestle somebody big as a dark match for sitting through those 4-hour marathon tapings. Same thing here. Like give me Swerve versus Hangman 1-on-1, and I'm gonna go because I was promised that match 2 months ago. But they don't do that. They'll throw a bunch of names, and sometimes it's the names you don't even want to see because the roster's so big. And that's one of the little things that's affecting attendance.
And yeah, I 100% agree with you. And sometimes, like you said, these guys don't wrestle. They wrestle so rarely. Like they're gone for like 3 weeks, and then you ever see them. You're like, what happened to that?
Yeah, you can't build momentum like that. You cannot build momentum. And you know what? What you just said right now, people are starting to catch on to that because you do hear online where it's like, well, if I get behind this guy, then he's gonna be gone for 3 weeks to a month. Like Warlow, how many starts and stops has that guy had? You know what I'm saying? So it's like eventually you give up, and everybody just becomes a worker bee on the roster.
Yep. I 100% agree. Okay, the next big story here before we get to the actual the storylines and the actual matches. Dave opens a story. He opens an issue, the February 20th, 1989 issue. He opens it with this sentence. Yes, folks, there is no Santa Claus. And what he is writing about.
I love young cynical Dave, bro. He pops very. No, let me take a little side road here for a minute. Just a couple of things that make me chuckle in the Observer. First of all, he used to say so and so downed so and so, like he wouldn't say beat, defeated, or won. He would say so and so down. And I was like, is that like an old carny term that nobody uses anymore? Maybe that's from the boys. But yeah, he would use the term down to signify that somebody beat someone else. He uses the term the office a lot. He doesn't call them companies or organizations like the Canadian company or the Stampede. No, yeah, it was something like that, right? The like that's what he refers to the territories as.
Yeah.
As offices. Anyways, I chuckle at that stuff. But what were you going to say?
I thought you were going to say how he doesn't even call them WWF. He just calls them Titan all the time.
Titan, I love that. That pops me to no end.
Okay, so Vince and Linda, they were trying to they had a new they were in New Jersey. They had a state senate hearing in hopes of getting pro wrestling taken away from the authority of the athletic commission, because if you had an athletic commission, you had to have a doctor present, and then they taxed your event. You would have to give them money because they were providing you services. And Vince and Linda went to these people and they were like, hey guys, it's predetermined. Now, this is what I wanted to ask you about. Even if it's predetermined, these guys are taking bumps, right?
Yes.
Like you see blood, like not really in WWF at this time, but in the NWA, there's lots of blood. There's bumps. There's submission holds. And so, just the idea that, oh no, it's predetermined, thus no one really gets hurt. They're trying to skirt this 4% tax or whatever on the gates that they would have to provide.
Which is really corny. Yes, it's really corny because at the end of the day, these guys still need a medical team there, right? It still needs to have some sort of regulation. You don't want one of the boys to like drop dead from a heart attack, which has happened, unfortunately. And the fact that they want to kind of like penny pinch on what's very important when it comes to the health of these wrestlers it is what it is. That's what wrestling was, to them, it was like, this is an exhibition. It's theater, therefore we don't need to be regulated as an athletic contest. But these guys were all like drugged up to the gills and juiced up. You need somebody there to at least take their blood pressure. You know what I'm saying? Because these guys, I mean, that blood pressure was shooting sky high if you watch any of these promos. So yeah, no, I never liked that. I never liked that they try to get them regulated because it just shows how unethical they were back then and how much they were really trying to skirt the system and not really have the wrestlers' health in mind during that time.
Now, eventually what happens is they have their own doctors and they have an actual medical team. And
yeah, but remember, but remember for years they had that French masseuse guy. That was their medical team. I forget his name, but he would for once in a while they would say his name on TV. And next time I'm watching a no show and I'll hear his name, I'm a pop. But yeah, it was like they had this French guy that would just give these guys massages and then you're good to go, It wasn't until what, maybe, I don't know, maybe since the whole Benoit Guerrero thing where they had an actual medical staff there, back before then, if something tragic happened, they would still just call an ambulance from the local city to come and do their job, But yeah, no, this didn't change for years.
Yeah, the original chiropractor, Harley Race, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I found that story, and the reason why they're in New Jersey is because WrestleMania 5 is in New Jersey, and Dave writes that between the live and televised money, we're talking about a pie which could be in the $20 million range. 3% of that is $600,000 of pure profit for Titan. So that's why they're interested in getting it deregulated. All right, let's talk a little bit about the NWA, because we talked about this. I think we talked about this at the end of the last shows, the change in the booking team. And they bring in someone from the older days and who had just previously been fired by WWF a couple years prior than that. George Scott is
not George C. Scott, which they made the joke on the Observer. I tried to make it last time. Yeah, not George C. Scott, but George Scott.
He called him General Patton.
Yes, because he's an actor. That's right. Well, he plays that General Patton.
So the booking team is George Scott, Blackjack Mulligan, Gene Anderson.
But wait a minute. I popped because these guys, even in an administrative role, they keep their gimmick names,
and Paul Jones. So that is the new booking team for the NWA, and the road agents are Paul Jones, Gene Anderson,
the Stooges, as the boys would call them,
Blackjack Mulligan, Blackjack Lanza, Grizzly Smith is still around at this point, and we know
which is interesting, right? Because as kids, we always remember Blackjack Lanza as a WWF agent.
Yeah,
somehow he left, had a little moment with the NWA, and then comes.
This is my misreading. You're 100% right.
Mm.
Lanza, Grizzly Smith, and Tony Gurria are the WWF.
Oh, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, Paul Jones, Gene Anderson, and Mulligan, who are on the booking team, but they are the road agents for the NWA. I screwed that up.
Okay.
And no more David Crockett. He's history as far as being in front of the camera. And Jim Ross is going to handle the TBS shows using different co-hosts, including Jim Cornette, Magnum TA, and Paul E. Dangerously.
Which is what happens, yes.
Bob Caudle is doing some syndication stuff.
One of my favorites.
Like we mentioned, Tony Schiavone was going to do the syndication, but he decided to leave and to go to WWF. Bob Caudle, the interesting thing about Bob Caudle is pre-Chi-Town Rumble, they do maybe the worst Clash of Champions of all time. This was a terrible Clash of the Champions show, St. Valentine's Day Massacre. But they basically copy 1983 Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat angle for the build to Chi-Town Rumble, where Ricky rips off Flair's clothes. And what Dave wrote is that Bob Caudle was the announcer in 83 in the ring doing the interview, and then he's also the announcer in 89. Bob Caudle was awesome. I always thought he was like, he gave, for whatever reason, and I don't know why, maybe it was his voice.
He gave credibility, right?
He gave it credibility. Yeah.
But he was also one of those, like, you know how in our society, there's this like societal agreement where old people have license to say whatever the fuck they want. Like, he was already an old guy then. He had to be like in his 60s, right? And he's over here saying that, oh, well, Ricky Morton's sister is deaf and dumb, and we send her the best wishes. Now, I know that was okay then, right? But it's a mindfuck to hear it now. And I feel like Bob Caudle is one of those guys that even now in 2024 would still talk like that, you know? It's just so weird because he says that a lot. And I always do a double take. Like, did I just hear what I think I heard? And it's specifically Bob Caudle. But he does have that very like comforting, nurturing voice, very like sporty voice, right? Like a sports anchor or whatnot.
He felt like a professional announcer rather than a wrestling announcer necessarily.
Yes.
So
right.
All right. So that is your NWA booking team. Another piece of information before we get to the Friday night main event angle. Starrcade does a better buy rate than the Royal Rumble, which is not that surprising because that's the NWA's big show, and this is only the very first pay-per-view for the Royal Rumble. But the Royal Rumble, even you go to 92 with the Flair, which is your favorite one, like those buy rates for the Royal Rumble were not all that impressive, especially in the first several years of that show. And I guess it's because when you don't really have a main event, you don't have anything that you're selling. And the fans are like, well, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to buy. Am I going to buy a mystery show? Also why tournaments don't usually do very well.
I think it's the world title thing. I think back then the world title also had more credibility. And so if it wasn't on a big show, you know, there was no reason to buy it, you know. And like you said, I think with the early Royal Rumbles, they hadn't gotten over the aspect of the mystery entrances because they really didn't have any unless somebody like didn't show up or something. Then they'll do the replacements, but it wasn't for a pop. It was just because somebody didn't show up. So during the early years, the Royal Rumbles weren't promoted as this can't miss event, right? It took that happened later, especially when they connected the title shot to the WrestleMania title shot to the winner of the Royal Rumble. That's when the buy rates improved. But the early years, it was just another show. But remember, even back then, you know, when you're used to like that nickel and dime kind of house show revenue, even low buy rates are going to give you millions of dollars in revenue. So it was worth it.
Well, and then last time I played the Ric Flair interview, and when I asked him about that 92 Royal Rumble, that's kind of where it sets the Rumble to a different direction. Is once they do that match, and then the next year, the winner of the Rumble gets the WrestleMania shot. So that they very smartly changed the trajectory of what the Royal Rumble becomes after that one.
And it's interesting because you're correct, and also it was it became more angle driven. because the next year we had the whole Giant Gonzalez thing, which was wacky, and then the following year we had the whole Bret Hart, Lex Luger thing. So
Mhm.
it did became one big angle, and then they got better at it as the years went on, and then that's what really captivated people to buy the show, right? Because like, okay, what's going to be the big angle this year in the match?
Today, I would say that the Royal Rumble is the second biggest show for that casual wrestling audience, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I still get excited for it. That's a big deal. I think there's a couple of reasons. One of them's a little concerning. One is because that gimmick has always been protected. You've
Mhm.
never seen a Royal Rumble. Well, there was a tag team Royal Rumble during the Vince Russo era, but we're going to forget that one. But you've never seen like a Royal Rumble on Raw take the majority of the show.
Yeah.
The one that scares me a little bit is the expectations of that show, because they've also promoted this night of mystery around
They
the
didn't
Royal.
have that much on this year's show, right? There wasn't a
Right.
lot of like special surprises.
Correct. But notice how they never stop that either. Like they never try to make it to where they never try to lower our expectations going into the Rumble. They actually kind of feed into that by not naming any of the participants. Even though it's just guys on the roster, you never get the 30 names or even like the 28 names, leave a couple of them for surprises. It's always like the four main event guys and then a bunch of like shadows all over the screen or whatever. So I think that's a little dangerous. If I was the promoter, you don't want to build those kind of expectations, because you could have a great Rumble, but if you don't deliver in the mystery department with all these entrances, they're gonna see it as a letdown. And I think every year is more and more about, oh, who's gonna show up, who's gonna show up, So I don't know.
Are you saying you want to hear Pete Dunne tell everyone why he's going to win the Royal Rumble this year?
Yes, I do. Like back in the day, back in the day, you would get like five participants a week for about a month,
Uh-huh.
until you had all of them.
All right, let's talk about this main event with Hogan and Savage against Big Boss
I
Man
love it.
and Akeem. I found the interview before the match started to be fantastic. Both interviews, actually. When Mean Gene asked the they weren't even the Twin Towers yet, I don't think. Were they?
No, there were Bossman and Hakeem.
Boss Man and Akeem. When he asked them, why are you guys going to beat the Mega Powers here? Slick says, because we have 3 men's and they only have 2 men's.
That's right. I love the
And
slicker.
so he's essentially saying that Elizabeth, being a woman, she's not match up to the the acumen or the physicality or whatever, even though Slick's not
Mhm.
actually in the match. So he considered that to be the main reason why they're going to win. And on the other end, Hogan himself said the reason that they're going to win this match is because of the love they have for each other. And he goes, the love I have for Elizabeth, like a sister. And I was ready for Macho Man. I was ready for Macho Man to just like pop him right there.
Yes.
And the love between the Macho Man and myself as brothers, and the love between the Macho Man and Elizabeth as husband and wife. It is that love that is going to take them to win the match. He didn't say that it was just going to be because I am Hulk Hogan, I'm going to beat them by myself, which is
But he wanted to
what
say
happened.
that because Hogan was always a heel. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of use, because with all these young kids using technology to create all these their own narratives using old footage. Somebody should do a YouTube video where they show Hogan actually being a heel from like 19 from the Paul Orndorff angle, which he was definitely a fucking heel. I don't care what anybody tells me. All the way up into he
He
turned
didn't pick
heel.
up the phone, man. Orndorff is calling him.
Yes, exactly. This guy was a heel through and through throughout the 80s. And the only guy that was fooled by it was Gino Monsoon, because according to him, he was the greatest athlete on the face of this earth.
He was.
I miss Gino, man. He was so overly exaggerated.
It's funny you brought up the athlete thing, because when Hogan goes to the backstage where he's carrying Elizabeth, and she gets hurt in this match, and he's got to run back. Elizabeth does the Adrian thing from Rocky 2, like, win. No, go help Randy,
And powers them up.
and he starts running. I'm like, oh my god, this dude can barely
Embarrassing.
pick
Those
up his
legs.
legs.
Yes, yes. Yeah, one of the things about this show that makes it wackier is that it was live. It was live on a Friday night, so you couldn't edit. Now on the network, they edit the countdown. I was waiting for that, and it's not there
No,
anymore.
it's not there.
But they couldn't edit that Academy Award performance by Hogan. That's something that.
Holy crap.
Oh my-
Okay.
Go ahead. You
Okay.
make sense of this.
No, okay. So you mentioned the acting performance. Now let's remember this is something that we're gonna be able to cover later this year, which is Zeus comes along later this year, and thus No Holds Barred comes along right later in '89.
That our brain is gonna explode, Garrett. We're not gonna be because is that Tiny Lister? We've already I had this discussion with the KLB. Like the worlds, the multiverse collides here.
Yes.
We don't know if that's Zeus from the movie, Tiny Lister playing Zeus. Is he mad at Rip or is he mad at Hogan? Like all these things our brain are gonna explode. But go ahead.
So we know Hogan's going to be acting in an actual movie. So this is really like his demo tape to show the fans that he can actually act. And he takes Elizabeth in the back. Now so Randy gets whipped to the outside and he kind of leg lariats her across the top of her chest.
That was a hell of a bump. That's the best part of this entire thing.
She takes two crazy bumps on this show. So Hogan, he's got to pick her up, and Randy's in the ring, and Randy's getting beat up, so he can't leave the match, and Hogan has to carry her to the back. And as he's carrying her to the back, and he lays her down, and he's telling the doctor, "Save her life."
Yeah, save her. Don't die. Save her.
Don't
Save
let
her.
her
Please
die.
save her. Yeah. And that wrestler voice, which makes it wackier.
This guy is going so over the top with no dialogue. I imagine to Hogan, this whatever it was, 60 seconds or whatever that the camera was on him and he had to come up with dialogue. It must have felt like an hour. He's
Yes.
repeating the same lines over and
He
over.
starts
and over.
negotiating with God after a while. And it's like, please, God, please don't save, please.
Don't blame Randy. It was an
Yes.
accident. Elizabeth,
Yes.
he didn't mean it.
So he's already healing on Randy, right?
Yes.
As a grown up, now we see that he's a fucking asshole. Like, come on.
So
Passive aggressive behavior at best, right there.
But it is like the worst acting job anyone has ever done in this scenario. And later this year, he's coming out with a movie where he's the star of the movie. So didn't really give us a lot of hope for that movie. Okay, so what in my rewatch, I watched this live when I was a kid, when I was 12 years old. And I'm sure I've seen it a couple different times over the years, especially with the advent of YouTube. Of course, everyone has searched in their YouTube browser the 2 words of jealous eyes. You just want to hear that line again. But honestly, it had been a while since I rewatched this. The angle in of itself, the way that they put it together is great. Like it's the culmination of what
it was all savage though. As far as to me, the melodrama working was savage.
Oh,
because Savage was not acting. I don't know if maybe somebody didn't clue him in, but the guy was so intense, right? He was so intense. But this is what pops me. Okay, first of all, the quote unquote hospital setting is literally just like a hallway where they threw a couple curtains over. And I don't know if you saw it, but I think they have like merchandise. They have merch, just like I don't know if it was supposed to be like doctor coats or whatever hanging, but they just have merch right there. So that's already a cartoon. But Savage's intensity is what really takes us back to the realism. But what pops me is that Savage is saying he's jealous, but not at Elizabeth, because it is the man's world in 1989. He's jealous because he's not the WWF champion. That popped me right there too. I'm like, what the fuck? And then Elizabeth takes second place. Oh yeah, you're also jealous because of Liz. You're the luster. But yeah, that probably the fact that because he's not the champ, point at the belt. You're jealous of that.
And also just ask me for a title shot. You're not man enough to ask me for a title shot.
And Hogan wasn't because that's how he got a title shot. Also, another thing is that I don't know if the technology wasn't quite there yet at that time to do the picture-in-picture gimmick, but we can't see the match
No,
when
not
when when, when the backstage melodrama's happening.
and the live audience could not see what was going on in the back.
Cannot see the angle. That's right.
So
Yeah.
So finally, Elizabeth comes to. She's like, "Go save Randy." And so Hogan kind of gets that look in his eye, and he runs back to the match, and he jumps on the apron.
Well, he not runs. We can't give him that kind of respect. He hobbles, skips.
He was
lumbering. Yes.
And so Savage, Savage just slaps this dude right in the face, and then he hops the rope, and he goes
the baby face in my eyes
to see Elizabeth. So Hogan, he's heartbroken. But he's not heartbroken enough to lose this match. That's for sure.
No, he's not.
Because he
or 3 months of building up the Twin Towers either, because he squashes the fuck out of them.
Okay, what did you think about Akeem's bump through the ropes?
It was fucked up. I mean, pretty dangerous. So for the people that have never seen it, so here we have a close to 500-pound man just running towards the ropes at full speed. And then we've seen this before with let's say the Taz of the world, right? Because they're smaller people.
Yeah,
I've seen Taz do shit like that many times in videos. But Akeem's a big dude, and he somehow ends up in between the top and middle rope.
Yes,
and he just falls backwards. But Akeem is one of those guys that was also always an athlete. Like, we don't give these guys enough credit just because they're big and fat. We don't give them credit for like being athletes. These guys are athletes.
Yeah,
he's okay. He's fine, but it was pretty scary. If that would have happened to me, I would have been on workman's comp for like a year. Because it's like, dude, like, what the hell? And just the fact that you're not ready for it, you can't brace for it, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And then the big boss man's on the other side, and then he gets handcuffed to Slick.
Yes, he gets handcuffed. So
very Roadrunner-ish.
Hogan runs to the back, and he's yelling for Randy.
And then they protect the Twin Towers though, because he didn't pin him.
Yeah,
it was just thrown out.
So.
Oh no, he did pin out King. That's right.
He pinned.
That's right. Go ahead.
They go to the back, and this is what everyone remembers. What are you doing, Randy? And Savage is just so fired up, and he tells Hogan all of the things that he's been doing wrong. You have eyes for my title. You have eyes for my lady. And he takes the belt, and he wallops Hogan with the belt. Hogan flies backward, and so. This is, again, you mentioned the man's world of 1989. So Elizabeth runs over to Hogan, and she's just checking on him. She kind of covers him, like, just to see how he's doing. Randy Savage grabs this small woman by the arm, and he throws her. Now,
a little uncomfortable.
We don't see her actually fall, but we see her fly towards the camera and like losing balance in high heels. Like, it's crazy.
So Elizabeth Hewlett, not the character Miss Elizabeth Hewlett, took a nasty bump to give credibility to this angle. So props to her on that.
I mean, Randy threw, like, this dude.
He launched her.
Giant athlete, play baseball, just throws her. I was like, that was the thing that I was like, whoa, I don't remember it being like that. And so Randy's about to plaster Hogan with this belt. And now this is where I say, go back to It's a Man's World 1989 in wrestling. So Elizabeth gets thrown. Nick Bockwinkel and all these guys who are in the back, you would think that they would go see how Elizabeth is doing. No, 3 dudes go over to see how Hogan is doing because he just got plastered with this belt. And so, they go back and forth, and they come back, and in one instance, you see Beefcake, and Beefcake's like saying, "Randy, what are you doing?" And he kind of holds Randy from hitting Hogan again with the belt.
Which was the introduction, I believe, of Beefcake being best buds with Hogan. Because before that, they kind of had their own thing going on. This was the first time, and it would be all through '89 where Beefcake is like the best buds of Hogan.
Yes, yeah, because Beefcake is his tag team partner in this, in the stuff in the end of '89.
In life, really, during those early years.
Yeah.
I mean,
so. Then you mentioned that because this was a live show, Hogan's asking for the countdown and the tizine, and
that's right, he's talking cardio. I forgot about, like, why, right?
Yes, so
it's like that one time in 2010 where Carlito gives a backflip to Chavo Guerrero, and then Chavo just says right alive on there, he's like Mizunki flip. Like, I was like, what the fuck?
Like even in 2010, they're still talking like that. You know,
Oh my God. Okay,
these guys they live in their own bubble. I'm telling you.
so here's my question. I mean, would you have you were really young? Would you have
I was 8 during
would you
this
have
time.
watched this live?
No, no, I don't remember. I don't remember it, but yeah, I don't because it was on network TV,
Yeah.
so I don't remember that I watched it live.
But were you ever into Miss Elizabeth as like the pretty girl, the pretty there's very few valets in wrestling, and a lot of them were used for, because they were sexy and stuff. But Elizabeth was like she looked like you could have seen her at the Oscars or something. Like that's how they presented her. What did you think of Miss Elizabeth back then?
I mean, back then I would have been 8, so not much. But later on,
Even as you got older, like WrestleMania
yes,
8 or whatever.
right. As I started going up the rope in gym class, as Garth from Waynesville would say, um, and getting those feelings, um, that's when, yeah, okay, beautiful, beautiful lady. I always liked her accent though. She had that southern accent,
Yeah.
very thick, and she rarely cut a promo to where she was talking long enough to really hear it. But once in a while, when she would get to talk, you could hear it, and I thought that was very cute. But she was always like I thought she was perfect for the angle. Once in a lifetime angle, not just for the Mega Powers Explode, but for the Randy Savage saga. That culminated in WrestleMania 7, which is one of my favorite angles of all time. And she was perfect. Both of them were perfect for that. They caught lightning in a bottle, and they've tried to replicate it over the years. They had Mark Merrill with Sable, and it's just never the same. Because
Remember it was Cena and
Nikki Bella.
And Nikki Bella, yeah, they tried to
Yeah,
replicate that with the wedding proposal and everything.
But Elizabeth had an innate humility about her and an innocence, right? And she was perfect for that time, that era.
Yeah.
Nowadays, like everything, she would be like heavily criticized for a lot of different things. But yeah, no, right time, right place, perfect angle, and she was perfect for it.
I thought she was like the prettiest woman in the entire world when I was like 12 years old. Like I was like,
I could see that.
I was like, I don't know if there's anybody who looks like more of the perfection of the female individual than Elizabeth. But I did ask Big Dave. So in this time, and Big Dave would have been in his like later 20s, I believe.
Big Dave seems like a Missy Hyatt man to me.
Okay,
if you ask.
so you know where I'm going with this. So, and bringing this back to Big Dave, he's in the front row of Steamboat and Flair, and
yes, I saw that.
And I asked my wife, I pressed pause. I was like, "Can you tell who's in the front row there?" And the only thing she said is, "My God, that hair."
Yeah, that was cool. I respect Dave for that hair.
Okay, so I did ask Dave, Elizabeth or Missy Hyatt, and he said, in person, Missy Hyatt hands down was more attractive than Elizabeth. That was his rating, five stars, I think.
Okay, I'm glad he didn't fuck up his scale with that, which he has with everything else. But 5 stars still. Okay, wonderful.
So I mean that's the time frame, right? I would have seen Missy Hyatt wearing a Pro Wrestling Illustrated shirt in that time frame. Remember she was in those ads for PWI?
That's right.
Like, see, but to me as a young kid, it was different. Elizabeth was like this regal, like woman, going.
Let's just put it this way: you would marry Miss Elizabeth, and we would F Missy Hyatt. Let's just be real about it.
Yeah, and Missy Hyatt was like the sexy blonde, buxom, like that. The gimmicks were so different, so much so that when I met Missy Hyatt in person, finally, this would have been at WrestleMania 32, Dallas.
At Wale Mania?
No, it was not at Wale Mania, but it was that weekend, WrestleMania 32. One of your favorites, Ed in San Antonio, was talking to Missy, and I was like, "Oh man, do I really want to ruin Ed's moment here?"
That's a big deal for Ed.
And I was like, "Yep, I want to ruin this moment because when am I ever going to have another chance to chat up with Missy?" So I meet her; she's very nice. And then I did a little write up on my website. Somehow she saw it. I don't know if I tagged her on Twitter or something. But then she wrote a comment. She was very nice. And then during the pandemic, I would have interviewed her with Dave during the Me Too stuff that we were talking about. Though
Okay.
she did not get over with the audience very well from the Me Too standpoint, because she was like, we just wanted to be one of the boys and all that stuff. That was the mentality back then, which a lot of people don't understand.
No, you don't have to agree with it, but you have to try to understand it.
Yeah.
It was the immense pressure that these women were in. I mean, still to this day, men still are very much privileged, but back then, I mean, there was so much pressure, right, to conform if you want to be in a male-dominated industry. And so there comes a point, because of just like all this psychological preconditioning, that you just kind of give up and be like, if I want to be a part of this, these are the rules that I have to play by. It doesn't make you weak or ignorant. It's just that your environment kind of creates that. And so I could totally understand if somebody told me that, like somebody like Missy Hyatt was like, I just wanted to be one of the boys, and this is what I had to do to be one of the boys.
Medusa, very similar Medusa as well, and they came from a similar time frame. So
yeah.
Okay, so the fallout of this is the rating. Now,
and sold out house shows everywhere too, by the way.
Well, Savage was he still wrestled babyface in some of the matches, because he was still wrestling Bad News Brown in some of these shows, so he would have to be the babyface. And then when he and Hogan would be on the same show, they would split them. One's in the main event, the other's in the middle. And what they would do is they would have Elizabeth want to come down to be in Hogan's corner, and then Macho Man grabs her and pulls her to the back, so they show you that he's the heel and Hogan, you should be rooting for Hogan here. So the rating was not great. And
this made me laugh. Tell us the rating, which wasn't great.
11.6 and a 19 share for Friday Night Main Event. Now, ABC, with their normal competition of Perfect Strangers and Full House.
Yes, those two shows popped me when I saw that.
16.7 and 17 with a 27 and a 28 share. I mean, that just tells you the difference with television, right? The only thing that does that Perfect Strangers rating today is the NFL or like the Oscars. Like nothing, the Grammys did
nothing.
The Grammys did a pretty decent number recently, but still like not even close to, what broadcast TV was back then. So Dave said that the main event was seen in 10.5 million homes and by roughly 23,180,000 viewers, as compared to 33 million for the year before, which was Andre beating Hogan with the twin refs. Now, Dave has come down from that 33 million viewer number over the years, because he believes that they were counting too many people at home watching wrestling, which he believes is actually a little bit less. So I think he was saying like it could probably be closer to like 27 rather than 33,
which is still amazing when you think about
crazy. It. And then, and then bringing it back to today, last week's SmackDown, and I say last week for this live show, but on the audio feed, it'll be 2 SmackDowns ago. The Rock showing up on SmackDown with Roman Reigns, that was the #1 show on television for the whole week. Was SmackDown.
Finally.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling was the top show in broadcast, which is ridiculous.
I don't think that's ever happened, correct? This is the first time.
Never happened. All right, a couple of other things before we get to this Chi-Town.
Well, wait, you didn't tell us the rating for the Rock Roman Reigns.
It was I think the audience actually got up to 3 million for the Rock.
Because the reason I was waiting for a rating, because I wanted to compare the expectations.
It's like a point. It's like a 0.75 in the demo or something like that.
Like, 700,000. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's great now. But if that would have been the demo back then, and back then they didn't keep track of demos. But still, comparing 23 million, watchers to like 3 million, I mean, and now 3 million is a success. It just goes to show you how television has evolved or devolved or whatever you want to say.
Yes, absolutely. Cable, streaming, they just kept chopping up or slicing up the pieces of the pie, and now they're so small. Not that I want. Not that
I
I want
was
to
gonna
bring
say,
up Bill Cosby on this show, but like the Cosby Show's doing like 35 million people,
yes,
crazy numbers
right.
like that. So
Right, those days are gone. But even like recently, like the Super Bowl is the most watched television show of all time, which is in 2024.
yeah,
So I don't know if the lesson is there is that if you build or promote something big enough, the audience is still there. Because the Super Bowl um, still drew that kind of audience with all these other options, with YouTube as an option, streaming, all these new ways that our attention spans being taken away from television. The Super Bowl became the most watched television show, sports programming in the history of television. So it's interesting that we had the golden era, right, where shows are doing 30 million, the Cheers finale, 50 million, but yet the record is in the era where people are watching television less. So I feel like there's a lesson there somewhere.
it's supposedly it's either the Super Bowl or the moon landing.
Or the superb owl, as me and Danny used to call it, because there's sacrifices being made at all times during that time.
Danny's still trying to tell me why the Super Bowl was actually booked out
Worked.
instead of
Yeah.
as the Super Bowl was happening and as my team was failing in the end, he was telling me how it was a work.
Yes.
Okay, so the fallout, a little bit of fallout as we head towards WrestleMania season. There's a Rowdy Roddy Piper thing where he is, as we remember, he retires at WrestleMania 3. It's WrestleMania 5 coming up. He's back on the scene, and he re-signs with WWE or WWF after the NWA agreed to his salary demand, which was $500,000. But, and you'll love this one, David Wolf. You remember David Wolf?
Oh, I love that guy. Yeah.
From Cyndi Lauper.
Cyndi Lauper's husband, ex-husband now, but yeah, at the time.
I guess he was Piper's agent or he was Piper's confidant or whatever it was. I don't know if there was an official relationship there, but David Wolf basically said, look, you're comfortable in WWF. You know what you're going to get. Like they have roles ready for you. You don't have to worry about, the change of scenery in NWA. So Piper re-signs with Vince, and at WrestleMania 5, he does have a part of a long segment.
I love that though, because I'm a huge fan of Morton Downey Jr.
Morton Downey Jr.
So I love that. I love that segment. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think before we go on to the next segment, I do think, first of all, it was surprising to see that Roddy was in a bidding war. I didn't even know that happened.
No, me neither. Right before this time, what he's doing is he's showing up in Portland wrestling, basically.
Yeah, it goes back to Portland.
Showing up in the front row and slapping wrestlers in the face and stuff. Like that was what he was doing.
Yeah, but also I think it was a bad strategy from him because he came in as a babyface, and nobody was going to be a bigger babyface than Hogan at this time. So the best he could ever be was like number 2 or number 3, because at this time there was Jake the Snake, there was Jim Duggan, there was already other baby faces that were being used to draw money before Piper. And if you see his run, because he ended up leaving in '92, so he came back in '89, had the feud with Brett in '92, and then left. He didn't do much. He had the feud with Rick Rude, and then the Bad News Allen feud, which was a complete embarrassment. And pretty much that's it, and then he became a commentator for a while, which we love because he was coked out of his mind every time he was on commentary.
He's the vehicle to bring Flair in as well, in storyline at least.
That's right. And he's the one that put Flair over just to give him credibility before his run with Hogan, which was very rare for Piper. Now, there is actually a pinfall loss at the Garden with Ric Flair versus Piper, where Flair pins them with his foot on the ropes. I don't know if you've seen that one, but that was so rare at the time because Piper wouldn't put nobody over like that. But I feel like had he taken his chances, and we'll never know, right? Had he taken his chances with what eventually would become WCW, they would have treated him like a god because any WWE main eventer would treat it like that there, and he probably could have had a good heel run there, and work with Sting.
What if he turned heel in WWF? What if they did Hogan and Piper actually on pay-per-view?
I feel like Vince, he was one of those guys that would do a program and he was done. Like he never really went back to the same program again for a newer generation. And remember, that was when Vince, once you're in your late 30s, he's starting to think about putting you out to pasture, right? And at this point, that's where Piper was. So I don't know if he would match them up. I think had Piper turned heel in WWF, he would use Piper to put the young baby faces over.
And
Now, whether or not Piper probably wouldn't have agreed, but
no, but that's why I think it doesn't happen, because the only reason you have Piper to go heel and face Hogan is so Hogan would have someone else to beat so that he could stay on top. And Piper would not have agreed to do that.
No. So that wouldn't have worked out. He would have left.
Yeah, he would have seen that immediately and he would have bailed. So now it's interesting to think about, though, because they have WrestleMania 1, which is pre-pay-per-view era, and you never got that Hogan Piper pay-per-view until 1996, and they do really big business in 1996.
Well, no, they also wrestled at the Wrestling Classic, which was like the first official promoted as a pay-per-view, 1986. But that was a double DQ because Piper ain't putting especially Hogan, gonna put him over. So they did wrestle in a pay-per-view main event, but nobody remembers that.
Much smaller audience. They were not the company that they were in '89, which is why I thought it would have been interesting. But Piper would have never done it. He was
one last thing before we move on. I also feel that when Piper comes back in '89, he did have that quote unquote legend thing where you can't turn him heel anymore.
Yeah,
I think every wrestler that has kind of like a legendary run in their early years, there comes a point where they just can't be heels because they're legends. They're respected as such, and to try to turn them heel just goes against the grain. So I think he was also there as well. Maybe not, but who knows? We'll never know. But I think if they would have tried to turn him, there might have been some resistance from the fan base.
Okay, so Chi-Town Rumble is the February pay-per-view for the NWA, and they do the whole angle with Ricky Steamboat being the surprise wrestler for Ric Flair. And I mentioned the St. Valentine's Day Massacre Clash of Champions, which is, I think, the worst clash I've ever seen. Now, I'm sure there were some bad ones later, but for actually the whole job of this show is to build up this pay-per-view. It was the most boring thing. There was no good matches on this show.
Right.
Butch Reed is facing their young babyface Sting. To set up Butch Reed for Sting, you would think, they're going to have him just crush somebody. Nope. Stephen Casey, 15 minutes in the most boringest chinlock match you've ever seen in your life.
Yes.
Now, J.J. Dillon is gone, so who do they bring in for the Horsemen? None other than Hiro Matsuda, who's just got to be like, what the hell am I doing here?
Negative charisma, too.
He's in this angle I mentioned with Ric Flair and Steamboat, where Steamboat tears Flair's clothes, and Matsuda is he and Bob Caudle are just watching. He had to have been hating at that time.
Yes. And the angle that they used to explain it, where JoJo Dillon just sells the Horsemen to Hiro Matsuda. How do you do that? Like, how do you sell the four Horsemen? Well,
I was watching. John LaRocca and I did a Nitro 96 thing last year, and Chris Benoit and Nancy Sullivan explained their absence because they were off television. I'm sure Benoit was in Japan or something, as they were doing Horseman business in Europe somewhere. Like, what is Horseman business in Europe? Like, was he selling?
Maybe they were recruiting. They were recruiting a possible fifth Horseman.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah,
he wanted Jeff Jarrett out of there. Didn't want him. He wanted to keep him. Okay, so now here's the thing I don't remember about this Flair situation, right? Yeah, and Jeremy People says licensing deals. Yeah, that's what it was. It was licensing deals. So this was what I didn't remember about this angle. Ricky Steamboat comes in. The little dragon is with him, and his wife Bonnie is there as well. And I think Dave writes that in the 83 angle, Bonnie Steamboat is actually one of the women who come out with Ric Flair in that angle. And then now she's obviously with Steamboat. They're married.
But I think during this time, I'm not going to use the term P-whipped because that's not proper. But I do feel like Bonnie had the pants in that family. And if you talk to Ricky Steamboat many years later, because they ended up hating each other during that messy divorce.
Didn't she got the whole rights to the name? Right?
Yeah, the name and everything. And of course, the little dragon tried to be a wrestler, but he got a back injury and retired fairly young. Although he did make it to Florida Championship
Mhm.
Wrestling. Um, but this angle damn near almost killed Ricky Steamboat because at this time, men wanted to be like Ric Flair. So,
Yes.
and we'll get to it, but go ahead and say
No,
what you were saying
no,
before.
it's a great transition because what I was going to say is I didn't remember Steamboat being all about the family and the marriage and like
Whoa.
okay, so if he just does this angle in 2024, his biggest fan is Donald Trump, right? Like
Yes.
that's how crazy this thing is. It's about religion, it's about family, it's about husband and wife and morals. And because Ric Flair is not portrayed as being married, though Ric Flair is married, or at least his wife was married at this time. Ric Flair as the single playboy is everything that is wrong with men, and Ricky the Dragon as the husband and father is everything that is right in the family.
Very, very tone deaf.
That crowd is ready to turn on the dragon during this interview. And I just did not remember it that way from years ago. It was crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's very tone deaf, and I think it's for lack of a better term, it's very southern. That's a very southern booking philosophy, and I think they had to really keep in mind that they were booking for national audience at this point, and it's a combination of Ricky Steamboat being that goody two shoes family man that in itself might work if the heel wasn't Ric Flair. You know what I'm saying? But the heel at this point is a representation of the blue collar hardworking man that wants to just come home and pop a beer
Yeah.
and deal as Stan Hansen was said with the big fat wife and the 9 kids, and that's Stan Hansen, folks. That wasn't me that said that. So your average watcher at that time is like, yo, I want to be like Ric Flair. I'm already like Ricky Steamboat and I hate my life. Let me be like Ric Flair, So that's where you saw there was change there. Like they started to boo Ricky Steamboat.
Yep. And so the line that Flair uses, and I don't remember it exactly, I didn't write it down, but he basically said, "You go home to the same woman every night and look at what I have," because there's like 5 or 6 women that are surrounding him in this ring. And he's like,
Yes.
and I go home, and I go home with a different one. And so he like turns babyface in the ring while he's cutting this promo on Steamboat, which was fascinating to me. But then, they get to it where Steamboat eventually pulls Flair's slacks off, and then Flair's taking bumps in his underwear, and
Yes, makes a joke out of it to get over.
So then the crowd is kind of excited just to see what happens in the ring to set up that match. The main event of this show is wacky. Sting, P.S. Hayes, and the Junkyard Dog were supposed to be in the main event.
The junk food dog. Let's get it right.
The junk food dog.
The JFD.
And
you know what? Wait, it wasn't even the junk food dog. It was also when he abbreviated the JFD. It wasn't the JYD. It was funny. Like, why? That's just so hard. Young Dave was mean.
Do you buy Dave's explanation that the Junkyard Dog used to get a kick out of that nickname?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I know that the Animatic Warrior didn't. So, so there's that.
I'm sure Boris Zukov did not like.
Yeah, or the flatulous Moolah.
Yeah, that was not good. the human intermission, Greg the Hammer Valentine. That was
yes.
One.
Well, everybody in the WWF was on his shit list.
Yeah.
Did you see that house show when you were doing your reading where it was like 9 straight duds? Like, how does that happen? Like,
well, So Dave goes to a few shows before the Chi-Town Rumble. WWF runs Chicago right before the Chi-Town Rumble, and they almost double the audience just for
they always
show.
Oh, I was gonna say, I thought you meant they have those 5-hour shows.
Well, I mean, I'm
so
sure
they could fuck with the production crews.
Yeah, I'm sure it was like that as well. But I just saw the gate and the number of people there was almost double the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view, which was kind of crazy.
one of the things back then, and I was reminded of with the Clash and also the pay-per-view, the Chi-Town Rumble, was how they would always just put a mask on Jack Victory and just create a name for him, right? He was a Russian.
Oh yeah, he
but
did
then,
so much. He's like the most valuable guy on these shows.
but then at the Clash, he was the blackmailer.
Yeah, the
Like,
black
that was his
Mauler.
name.
It was the black mailer or the black Muller. Maybe you're
Oh, the
right.
Black Mauler, you're right. Yeah. So like they didn't really even have a name. Like, it was just put on this hood and go out there and do what you got to do.
By the way, I underestimated the difference in the draw. According to Dave, the pay-per-view in Chicago drew 5,111 paid. This compares to the 17,900 paid Titan drew at the Rosemont Horizon 2 nights earlier. More than 3 times the audience for a house show.
That was Boston and Hogan?
I think so.
Yeah, that was a hot program, though.
Yeah.
That was a hot program.
It's just insane, right? Like, I mean, again, very similar to you go to an AEW house show or AEW TV show. They're doing 3,000 people, and WWE ran the Oakland Coliseum for a house show. I don't know, about 5 days ago, and they had over 10,000 people for a house show. Just a random Saturday night house show. It's insane. Okay, so Dave, now you'll love this comparison of Ricky Steamboat. Dave says the worry is that Steamboat could be turning into Ronnie Garvin, who in 2 years prior was supposedly the babyface, but the fans turned on him and made Rick the babyface because Ronnie Garvin did not have the charisma that Rick did. But he also made one other comparison: 1983 Bob Backlund for the Dragon there.
Yeah, that clean cut baby face, that's just it doesn't really have a character, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what Ricky Steamboat showed us is that he has way more charisma than both of those other guys, and that's something that started coming out as the feud progressed.
Once they got in the ring, there was like no match. Like
that was his turf.
You forgot all about the bullshit once they got in the
ring. Yeah. All so right. So I think that's something that separated him from Backlund.
All right. What did you think of this show overall as a pro wrestling show?
Started out kind of rough, man. But it picked up towards the end. There was a couple of good matches. But why do you put Michael Hayes out there with like Jack Victory for like 20 minutes? Just nothing happening.
Minutes.
And also it makes it more difficult when the house is so small, right? And by that I'm saying there's no fans and it's dark. They're also having one of those like if you're going to a gym, you know how when you go to a house show at a gym they try to do the little rack set with the little lights. That's all they had as a production. And of course the ring is so small, but that's that always happens with NWA shows. And then you compare it to like the Dick Ebersol inspired production of WWF. So and it's just night and day.
So
but that helps. That helps. Like you feel more engaged when the production values are up to par. So that first half was so hard. Sting versus Butch Reed again, boring match. Butch Reed is washed up by this point.
20 minutes of Sting and Butch Reed.
Now things didn't start to pick up to the Midnights versus Midnights.
Yes,
because of Paulie Dangerously and Jimmy Cornette. They made this match. Jim Cornette's wearing a ridiculous like it's not a singlet. It's like an Olympic, like a whole bodysuit, right?
It looked like pajamas. It's like a grown man pajamas or something.
Yes. You know what I never got about this era that wrestlers would always wear that always bothered me? They would have like a onesie, but then they would have tights like underwear over the onesie, right? But here's what I never understood: the underwear itself if there's a word, it would connect to the onesie. Like let's say it was because Chris Benoit would do this a lot. It would drive me crazy. So Chris Benoit would be like Chris B in the underwear portion, and then Noir in the tight. Like why doesn't the onesie just cover the whole thing? Like why do you have to do that? Maybe it's for safety reasons. You don't want to have an accident and your whole junk's hanging out. I don't know. But do you notice that about like the old wrestlers, how they would wear like the onesie and then like tights over the onesie?
I did, but I didn't recognize the way that the name fit like that.
Yes. So you can't wear one without the other. It's a combined thing. So my question is just make one whole thing, like, and just put it on.
Right. So
that was a good match.
Yeah, no. So my complaint about this show is that matches 4 through 6 all had sort of similar finishes, right? Rotunda and Steiner. Steiner's got the sleeper on him, and Steiner's shoulders, touch the back. And Luger and Wyndham, they're both being pinned, and one of them raises their arm. Like it's like similar finishes rather than decisive finishes. And I understand you're gonna do rematches on the house show and stuff. You don't want these guys clean, so I completely get it.
Except for Barry Windham, who I believe was WWF bound by this point. We didn't know that yet, but he would go on to have a little run as the Widowmaker.
Can you imagine? He was still really good as Barry Windham in this time frame.
This would be the last year where he was really, really like tippy top guy good. Then he just got lazy.
Sad. So sad. And then the Road Warriors defeated the Varsity Club, and then we get to the main event. But Luger is funny because the selling point for Lex Luger for the fans was that, like he's become a better wrestler now. He does a superplex now. Like he's adding moves to his repertoire. And then the Flair match from Starrcade 88, it was like, he's leaning out. He knows that he's got to go for a much longer match. Like it just wasn't about Luger just being this strong guy, torture rack, babyface. It was always like he had to get better at wrestling so that the hardcore fans would respect him. Like that was a constant thing in his character that I always found interesting.
Right. No, you're right. Yeah. And it's something that he never really developed. So
he got better, but I think just the expectations were so high on that dude, right? Like just for everything. Like if for charisma, he's not a 10, he's like a 7 as a baby.
I wouldn't go that far.
But as a heel, when he and Sting were doing the thing in '96,
he was a 12 at that point.
He was awesome during that.
Yes.
Time. But the Lex Express, they wanted him to be a 10. He was like a 6.5, 7. Like he just never got there,
right. but also he was one of those guys that was like extremely lazy too.
Not on his workout and diet though.
No. And on his cheating abilities, as he would reveal later on.
These guys just give themselves up in these books when they write these books, man, about their infidelities. Like Bret Hart is just all about how he just wants to love his wife, but the road owns him, and he just has
the road will own you.
Just has to have sex with all these other women, and he just is regretful throughout the entire book. All right, so the main event is a classic match, Flair and Steamboat. I'm watching this match. There's one spot that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But again, this is the finishes. They're trying to protect everybody in these finishes. It's a clean match. Everything is just flowing. Everything's working great. Somehow, Ricky Steamboat gets to the top rope, and he's about to do the finisher that they've been putting over. He beats Flair on WTBS with the high cross off the top rope. Somehow, Tommy Young did not know this move was coming and just decided to get in the way. He didn't even get pulled in. He just got in the way.
Yeah.
And so
I'm surprised that still kept the 5 stars going, because I think this match got.
This is my point. So that they fumble the finish a little bit in just because they're kind of have to do the ref bump. Like that's the booking back then. And Steamboat eventually wins. But it's hard to watch this match today with 1989 eyes, because in 1989, I have probably only seen one match in my life that was as good as this, right? Which would have been Savage and Steamboat from WrestleMania 3. So I don't really know. I'm not watching, Japanese tapes at this point. I wasn't watching, some of these old 60-minute house show matches from back in the day, back in the old days.
But the Southern tag teams in the NWA, they had some classics too around this time. Not as good as this match, but like the Fantastics,
the Midnights, yeah, for sure.
The Bushwhackers of all teams, those kind of.
So, but as you're watching this in 2024, does it hit the same as it would have when you saw it the first time?
No, no. I mean, we've been so like desensitized, right? Just so many good match after good match now. But what you do respect is the craftsmanship
Yes.
because it's the fluidity of this match. It's like one thing after another, bang, 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 bang. The two counts, one, two, like constant, constant, constant. So that's where the professionalism comes in, and it's just two guys that are so synergized that they're just they're in their own world at this point, right? Remember that scene in Creed 3 where like the audience vanishes and they're fighting
Yeah.
boxing? And that's what I imagine these two guys were like. They're like they just tune everything out, and it's all about this performance, and everything's perfect. And what would be great about this series is that they would give you Easter eggs in the next two matches
Mm-hmm.
because every match built off the previous one. And then in that 55-minute match in New Orleans, the same night as WrestleMania 5, that's when you get the culmination of everything. That's like the Avengers movie right there, where you're getting all these little things and they put it all together for that 55-minute match. So this is just the first act right here, and it's amazing. You know,
You're a
But
movie. You're a movie guy. You mentioned
that's
Creed
why I keep on making these connections to movies.
and their ability to zone the audience out and just be the two of them.
Yes.
There's a baseball movie in which Kevin Costner does that as well. Do you remember that movie?
Well, which one is that? Still the Dreams?
For the
No,
love of the game.
For the Love of the Game. I've only seen that one. That's
He-
a Clint Eastwood movie, I think.
he's throwing the perfect game and he hears the crowd, but once he grabs the ball and he gets on that mound, the crowd is silent. He doesn't hear them at all, like because of his focus. That's what I always
Yeah, yeah.
um
Let's hope that Yamamoto has a few of those nights.
no.
In the-
I never seen so much media for the guy just to throw a bullpen in my whole life. My God.
yeah.
Moto.
What I was gonna say. Well, today was the first game, and the spring training. They defeated the Padres 12-1 or something like that. So hopefully that's a good omen of things to come.
I may have to bring you on to the Thompson to Clark podcast so we can just talk Giants Dodgers for a little while.
No, that would be great because I'm a baseball fan.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Well, I shouldn't say I don't hate the Giants. I despise the Giants.
Yes.
But it's the LA in me, right? Just like you hate the Dodgers, is the Bay Area boy in you.
Absolutely. Just
So
Lakers too. I can't stand the Lakers either.
yeah, so it's like, yeah, I don't mind going out there and just spitting facts about whether it's the rivalry or what's going on in 2024.
I'm telling you, you guys have maybe the best team I've ever seen. Though by having the best team I've ever seen, it's World Series or bust again for you guys.
I don't understand. Yeah, anything less than that is gonna be a complete disappointment. But this year's different. I don't understand how we don't get there by the sheer talent. Like I just don't understand. That's not gonna make sense to me in my head.
Only injuries, which could hurt, but still, like at the same time, you guys have depth as well. Like that lineup, there's no hole in that lineup at all.
Yeah.
So
Right, and we haven't even started like thinking about the prospects that are gonna come up in the middle of the season, which always happens with all these teams. They bring people up from AAA. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I don't know if I'm gonna be going to the ballpark as often because those prices are a little ridiculous, but we knew that was gonna happen.
yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, they could bring him down a little bit because Otani just allowed you guys to pay him like the tax money that Vince didn't want to pay the commissions for.
No, you're right. But this is the corporation. You think they're gonna do that?
Yeah, no, not at all. Okay, so a little bit of a detour there, but I am going to bring you on Thompson to Clark one of these days. So at the end of this, Ricky's the champion, and they do the old school thing that they did with Hogan when he beat the Iron Sheik. They go to the back in the locker room. Bob Caudle is trying to talk to Ricky. I don't remember who sprays him in the eyes with the champagne, but all of a sudden you can't see. He's really frustrated that his eyes are burning, and it stopped him from cutting his actual promo at the end of the match. And Bob Caudle has to go, you just don't have the words right now. Like, what's going on? And Ricky,
he tries to say, if it was Gene Okerlund, he would have saved it.
I just found that whole thing. It's like, okay, this is the difference between Ricky in the ring and Ricky outside the ring. Like he should have been bang, bang. Like he should have had everything in his mind. He knows he's going to win the match, and he just does not cut that like tremendous babyface promo like Hogan did when Hogan won the world title, you know, with Andre in the back and all that stuff. He had everything ready, but he did keep.
Or when he lost the world title at that main event, he also had her crying and praying to God. Why they cheated me?
Well, I don't know if you've seen that when Hogan won the world title promo in a long time, but he says that he's really turned on like 3 times.
I was surprised he didn't say it's better than coming like Arnold did at that, you know, when he would win the competition.
Pumping Iron.
Yeah, Pumping Iron, that's right.
Pumping Iron is a really good movie, though.
But it shows what an asshole he is, though. For the people that have never seen Pumping Iron, he's the biggest heel in that movie.
He's amazing.
The way he fucks with Lou Ferrigno, like
my God.
And also, I mean, the darkest part is when his dad dies, right? Where he's like, I can't focus on that right now. I gotta concentrate. And I'm like, yo, your dad died. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's surreal to see that. But he's always been one of those guys that if you work hard, you know, that traditional like conservative outlook, right? Yeah. Work hard enough and you get what you want. But I mean, look at what it's cost them. You know, it's just horrible to hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, watch Pumping Iron, folks, if you want to see a real heel.
Yeah, it's an amazing film.
I love it. Yeah.
So that ends this. That ends this for us here. We'll be back for the March shows because WrestleMania is in April, so we won't actually have a show, right? Is it in WrestleMania in April of this year?
Yes, April 1st. No. You're talking about this year or 89?
No, I'm sorry, in 89. Yeah.
89 is April 1st, I believe. Yeah, April Fool's Day.
April 2nd. April 2nd.
April 2nd. I was off by 1 day. Yes.
So for March, we'll have most of the rest of the build to WrestleMania 5 and whatever else is going on in NWA. And you know, I've been trying to look at other stuff like AWA. It's like, oh, Zbyszko wins a battle royal.
Oh, they're going downhill fast
like
by this point.
6 people don't show up. Okay, now this is the end, which I like to call only in the Observer. Okay. I pulled a couple of nuggets out from just random comments from Dave, random write-ups. So Dave writes, 2 hot rumors that are making the rounds in Japan with probably little or no substantiation.
But he's going to share them anyway.
Antonio Inoki and Sylvester Stallone will be starting up their own U.S. promotion.
Yes. I don't know why he would report that.
I don't know either. Okay. So Wendy Richter, after an AWA show in San Bernardino, she caused a minor disturbance on the airline. She brought a python snake on board, and according to the flight status report, after a couple drinks, took the snake out and placed it around her neck, which quite caused a disturbance. U.S. Air informed Richter that in future flights, she would have to put the snake in a suitable container, and it would travel with the checked-in baggage rather than as a carry-on. That's all? That's the only punishment she gets? Because they just tell her don't do it?
Don't do it again. That was back in the day, you know? But I like how, like, Dave, you could tell he's looking for news at this point.
Yeah.
Because he's reporting all this crazy shit that doesn't really even matter, you know?
Yes.
And Wendy Richter was one of those batshit women. You could tell just by the more you hear about her. It's no surprise that Vinny just cut ties with her and sent Spider Lady out there to take the belt from her and send her on her way. But yeah, that's Dave. You get a kick out of seeing young Dave all the time.
All right, here's the last one, and this is the best one. This is actually, this is not Dave reporting. This is the reader, one of his readers writing in.
I love that. Let me interrupt you real quick with one of my favorites.
Okay.
One of my favorites is Rob Sikowski from Battle Creek, Michigan, and he writes, "Does anybody have any Rob Van Dam tapes for sale?" That one always pops me when I see it, you know.
That's amazing, and it's not surprising in any way.
No, it's not. But what was your headline or reader pages?
Very similar of a guy as far as being a meathead to RVD there. Okay, from P.S. Novak from Hillside, Illinois. A very good female friend of mine attended the world-class show on January 15th in Melrose Park, Illinois. At this show, it was announced that Kerry Von Erich would sell his personal towel to the highest bidder. All monies would go to a children's charity. My friend bid $50 and was asked to come into the ring for a presentation where she received a kiss from Von Erich and the autographed towel. When she returned to her seat, she noticed the unmistakable emblem of the Sheraton Hotel on the towel.
That is wrestling. That's it. If you want to explain someone what wrestling was, possibly still is, that's the story right there.
Absolutely. All right. That is it. We will be back next month.
I wonder if Kerry kept the $50 though.
Instead of giving it to the charity?
Yeah. I mean, he did, right? I mean, he had to.
I would guess so. Or maybe he like decided that he got half or something and
No, that's Kerry. Come on.
Yeah. All right. This has been a blast. I love looking back at this stuff because it just feels like a different life. Like I mean, it is 35 years ago, but it feels like.
But it's not absurd.
Yeah,
it's absurd. The wrestling business. I mean, even up till now, but certainly back then, it was just so absurd and surreal at times, and the lack of self-awareness. Right. One of the things that makes that skit with Hogan, Savage, and Liz so memorable is how like there was this lack of self-awareness that went in a full circle and made it awesome. Like it's just watching wrestling from that era is just absurd and surreal to me sometimes.
Absolutely. All right, we will be back in March to discuss the March of 1989. So thank you to Draven. I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.